Hola, hola, ¿cómo están? Buenas tardes.
Eh,
¿Qué tal Mateo
Nacho
por allá?
querido, ¿cómo estás? Muy bien por acá. Con un
Bien,
poco de
bien. Yo
frío.
estoy en el hemisferio norte, así que al revés, con un poco de calor, pero me imagino, me imagino.
Sí,
Nada,
sí,
y
sí.
contento de estar probando este formato en un horario particular, ¿no? El primer experimento de horario
Total.
de almuerzo. Almuerzo para mí que estoy en México, pero imagino que por ahí un poco para otros, para romper un poco la monotonía de la tarde, ¿no?
Tal cual, estamos panza llena, ya tomamos el cafecito por acá, así que listos y bueno, con toda la energía puesta y todo el foco puesto en lo que se viene, que es tremendo.
Perfecto. Entonces, bueno, la aclaración inicial es que vamos a empezar haciendo esta introducción en español, pero pronto vamos a switchar al inglés para nuestra invitada Petra Wille, que nos va a acompañar el día de hoy. También veo que hay gente de Brasil, so hello to people from Brazil connecting today, if they don't speak Spanish. We are going to switch to English soon, but then first we're going to do the introduction in Spanish. Bueno, y sí, un poco más allá del horario especial, lo interesante es que nos acompaña una persona que está en el otro lado del mundo, está en Alemania, Petra Wille, que es una product coach, nada, que nos va a impartir mucho de su conocimiento y vamos a contar un poquito del
Impresionante.
formato que vamos a hacer en breve.
Buenísimo. Simplemente contar un detalle, Nachito querido, que somos, bueno, 13 comunidades de producto en todo Latam que estamos conectados para esta masterclass. Aparte, el punto importante acá y es, todos queremos aprender a cómo ser mejores product managers, ¿no?
Tal cual, tal cual.
Eso es muy
Justamente
importante.
hacemos la intro en un ratito a Petra y ella la verdad que es una experta en la materia, así que está buenísimo. Pero importante también que la sesión, ahora vamos a explicar un poquito el formato, pero va a ser derivada con sus preguntas directamente. Entonces va a ser también distinto al formato por ahí de Keynote, va a ser directamente atacando las preguntas que tengan. Entonces es muy importante que se conecten al canal de Slido, ahí lo tienen para ingresar, ya está disponible para que hagan sus preguntas, pero bueno, sí que me interesa que se vayan conectando, así vemos a todos ahí entusiasmados y ayudándonos a construir el espacio. Entonces, bueno, como les decía, la persona que nos va a acompañar es Petra Wille, que es una product coach y autora de este libro que tengo por aquí, uno de los libros que salió hace menos de un año y que yo digo que es una biblia para los líderes de producto y que habla mucho sobre eso, ¿no? Sobre cómo desarrollar product managers o desarrollarnos nosotros como product managers en nuestra carrera. Así que esa va a ser un poco la temática del día y, como decía antes, bien apuntada a que ustedes puedan resolver las preguntas que tengan.
Tal cual. La pregunta del millón, Nacho, ¿lo tenés firmado, el
No lo tengo
libro?
firmado, no lo tengo firmado, pero de hecho
Ah,
creo que es un tema logístico. Ahí
hay
le
que
voy a
hablar
pedir
con
a Petra.
Petra.
Sí, 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 tal cual.
Exacto.
Vamos a ver si nos encontramos en algún momento. La pandemia no nos permitió, pero ojalá lo podamos hacer en breve. Bueno, como
Buenísimo.
siempre, empezamos un poquito contando qué es ProductTank, dado que el público se renueva. Y bueno, como decía Mateo, la comunidad ya es muy grande en Latinoamérica, por suerte. Creo que muchos de los que estén aquí ya van a saber de qué va. Pero bueno, es una serie de meetups que empezó en el año 2010 en Londres. Y básicamente el principal objetivo es hacer de esta profesión, que es el product management, que puede ser un poco solitario a veces, que nos permite de alguna forma conocer a otros que estén en la misma situación y compartir experiencias y aprender entre
Exacto.
nosotros.
Siempre,
Y,
siempre me gusta, perdón que te corte ahí, me gusta contar cómo comenzó esto. O sea, esos 3, 4, 5 product leaders que se juntaban en ese pub en Londres, como siempre cuenta Martin Erickson, ¿no? Y, digamos, compartiendo frustraciones entre birras, entre cervezas. Y ahí surge, che, esto está muy copado, estamos, digamos, compartiendo algunas lecciones aprendidas y compartiendo, llorando juntos, ¿verdad? De nuestro día a día, algunas cositas que se pueden hacer mejor y vieron que se empezó como a generar una sinergia interesante, se empezó a sumar más gente y bueno, hoy estamos acá, como decía Nacho, con casi 200 ciudades. Perdón, Nacho, que te corté.
no, perfecto, justamente a eso íbamos, así que está perfecto. Y sobre todo a mí me pone muy contento en lo personal, porque lo venimos haciendo hace ya unos 6 años, creo, en Latinoamérica, y hemos visto crecer y fortalecerse esta comunidad. Y justamente el esfuerzo que hacemos, de hecho, extiendo ya desde ahora el agradecimiento, bueno, obviamente a Mateo y también a Diego y a Vero Vargas, que están behind the scenes ayudándonos con todo el soporte, pero a todos los organizadores de ProductTank en Latinoamérica que ayudan a que hagamos esto posible y que podamos compartir estos espacios que son tan importantes, ¿no?
Total.
Siguiendo un poquito entonces con la modalidad de ProductTank está organizado por nosotros, que somos personas de productos, sin ningún tipo de fin de lucro. Es un evento informal y, como decía, empezó Mateo, decía, un evento muy informal para tener personas, hacer networking. Y la idea es compartir, aprender, y quiero decir algo más importante para este evento en particular, que ese aprender depende mucho de ustedes. Las preguntas que tengan, este es un evento 100% orientado a preguntas, entonces las preguntas que tengan, no sean tímidos, pónganlas ahí en el canal, así podemos sacar el mayor provecho. Y fuera de la comunidad, o mejor dicho, fuera de los Product Tanks que estamos viendo ahora, Product Tanks son estos eventos organizados en cada ciudad del mundo con organizaciones locales que tratan de juntar a la comunidad local. Esto está dentro del paraguas de la organización llamada Mind the Product, que tiene un blog muy interesante, tiene conferencias anuales, tiene un canal de Slack, tiene una membresía para obtener material curado y exclusivo. Así que me parece que es súper importante que lo conozcan. Es mindtheproduct.com, no tiene mucha ciencia. Destacar un poquito que pueden ver las conferencias fuera de estos Product Tanks que tenemos locales. Hay conferencias que son a nivel mundial con speakers de todo el mundo muy interesantes. Y, por otro lado, hay un newsletter que también tiene contenido curado. Ustedes saben que la cantidad de lectura que hay para hacer en Product Management es muy grande.
Finito.
Entonces, exactamente, semanalmente, Mind the Product lanza un correo con las mejores lecturas de la semana.
Exacto. Comentarles que bueno, estamos obviamente en este formato online por toda la pandemia y demás, pero que ya va a volver el sanguchito, ¿no? O sea, el famoso sanguchito, el vasito de coca, bueno, estamos diciendo una marca, ¿no? Pero el vasito de gaseosa, además, que era algo que también que nos unía desde otro lado también, ¿no? Hoy estamos aprovechando toda esta cosa online por la pandemia y demás, pero que, bueno, ya vamos a volver.
Seguro. Todos esperando, me imagino. Bueno, habiendo hecho esa introducción, les cuento un poquito cómo vamos a hacer el evento de hoy. Entonces, el evento de hoy tiene la estructura que ustedes ya la habrán escuchado nombrar, que es una estructura de Ask Me Anything. Entonces, la idea es que tenemos a Petra, que vamos a hablar un poquito de ella en breve, que nos va a estar respondiendo a cualquier pregunta que ustedes tengan. Entonces, con Mateo simplemente lo que vamos a estar haciendo es moderar las preguntas, pero bueno, también en Slido pueden también votar preguntas de otros, así nos ayudan a ver cuáles son las más relevantes para ustedes. Y lo vamos a hacer de forma estructurada. ¿Por qué de forma estructurada? Porque la verdad que el tópico de desarrollo en personas de producto puede tener muchas aristas y muchos caminos a explorar. Y la idea no es tampoco cortar sus preguntas, así que en definitiva pueden preguntar lo que tengan ganas, pero sí para darle un poquito de orden a la conversación, se nos ocurre dividirlo de esta manera. Y entonces vamos a hacer 3 bloques de 15 minutos. El primero es assessing, que básicamente la idea es cómo puedo evaluar o autoevaluarme a mí como Product Manager, mis skills, mi performance, y entender un poquito mejor esa parte del desarrollo de carrera que en esta disciplina es tan complicado, ¿no? Tan a veces subjetivo. Segundo punto importante es improving, que es ok, entiendo ahora entonces tengo esta evaluación, ¿cómo hago para desarrollarme también? Muchas veces tenemos una serie de skills que no son tan directos o tan duros, cómo puedo hacer para desarrollarlos y cómo puedo relacionarme con mi manager, o a la inversa, ¿no? Cómo puedo yo ayudar a equipos como líder de producto, a equipos de producto a desarrollarse.
¿Qué problema tan relevante hoy, ¿no? O sea, con todo esto de la pandemia y el contexto y demás, y cómo estamos todos distribuidos, ¿verdad? Así que especial atención a este punto 2. Perdón, Nacho, dale 3.
No, tal cual. Mi anécdota, yo hice el onboarding en mayo de una nueva compañía de forma remota, y también tengo un equipo que conocí de forma remota, así que completo completamente el punto. Bien difícil. Y el tercero, que es el Challenging Environments, no se refiere a la pandemia en particular, o mejor dicho, sí podemos usar la pandemia, pero en realidad creo que es algo muy relevante para Latinoamérica, porque lo que suele pasar en muchas compañías donde hay personas de producto tratando de ejecutar es que las compañías o el leadership de las compañías no están muy acostumbradas o no tienen la filosofía de producto muy inmersa. Entonces, ¿cómo podemos lidiar con ese jefe o equipo o entorno de compañía que no nos ayuda a practicar las mejores estándares de product management, ¿no? Entonces, un poco es creo que de vuelta, muy relevante para Latinoamérica, y creo que Petra nos puede dar algunos tips, ¿no?
Total.
Así que bueno, sin más, ahora sí, I'm going to switch to English so we can welcome Petra. And Petra, welcome. How are you?
So happy that you switched to English.
Yeah.
Hello.
Really glad that you are here. I wanted to do the introduction in Spanish so everyone can understand what the idea behind each section was.
Nice.
And I will also offer un servicio de traducción. A los que no se sientan confiables preguntando en inglés, pueden preguntar en español, nosotros hacemos la traducción. So we can translate questions in Spanish to English. Feel free to do that.
And maybe in Portuguese.
Maybe in Portuguese.
How comfortable are you, Nacho, with Portuguese?
Okay. Not at all.
I can try.
Okay, good. So I was saying that, so Petra is a product coach. She currently lives in Hamburg, but she has been spreading her knowledge around the world. So we're very, very happy for that. I'm very happy that you are with us here in helping the Latam community as well.
It's my pleasure. So the pleasure is mine. Thanks for having me.
So we are going to talk about topics in this book, by the way. So we can all saw it, and we saw it in the initial screens. But first of all, I would like to ask you to give us a brief introduction about what you have been doing. What are you doing today?
Yeah, so what I'm doing. So for the last 8 years, more or less now, I first of all was helping product teams a lot with interims, head of product roles. So in Europe, if you go on maternity leave or parental leave, then that usually is for a longer period of time. So then companies usually search for somebody who can step in. And that was the first thing I did when I became self-employed, so to say. And from that role of an interims product lead, I slowly transitioned into this, your engagement ends, but maybe you could still stay in a coaching relationship with some of the product folks that we're having, because they really like to learn from what you already know about product management. So that was my way into coaching a bit. Over the years, I obviously educated myself way more on coaching and how to do it and how to help people to reach their full potential. And at some point in time, I think it was more or less 2.5 years ago, I realized that it doesn't scale if I only talk to product managers, right? So I thought about maybe I could help the product leads to get better in people development as well, and to focus a bit of their time on to the coaching part of the job, so to say. And that's what I've doing ever since. So I do one-on-one coaching for product leads, and I do group coaching session for product leads, and still some group coaching session for product managers to help them get better in what they do. And then, 2 years again, I decided to put all of the things that I learned into a book, and that's at least what I tried. So hopefully that worked out. It's a pretty dense book. It's a workbook. So it's for product leads, explaining them how they could actually help their team and product managers to become even better in what they do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I have read the book 3 times by now, so I have really used it.
I'm reading. Great.
And so one of the questions that comes to mind, I want to ask the typical question of why you have written the book. Probably you just said it, but I'm curious about after having the first feedbacks about the book, what's one of the key challenges that you see that people resonated with, or you really get your help there?
So it's not a read it front to back book, for sure not. As said, it's a workbook, right? So for example, if you need to explain product discovery to some of your product managers, then there's a chapter. You can turn to this chapter, and you could try to be more of a coach in helping them to understand discovery, and not so much a person that telling them, hey, that's what you need to do. Please now go do story mapping, and then everything will be fine, right? So that is what the book is all about. What the people usually struggle with, the product leads in that case, is a bit of, whoa, that's a lot of upfront work. Because what I'm talking about in the first part of the book is, if you're a product leader, first of all, you have to figure out what is your definition of a good product manager. So in your context, in your team, in your environment, and in your personal opinion, right? What makes a competent product manager competent, so to say? And that is what is rarely existing in a written form in most of the companies and for most of the product leads. They all get why it would be a good idea to do this and to really do this exercise and create this first assessment. But everybody's kind of shying away from the effort. And that's why I launched some years ago already. It was in 2016. I launched something that is called the Product Management Wheel. It is available for free. You can download it on my website, Nacho. And Federico translated it to Spanish, and Gabriel translated it to Portuguese. So there are even a Portuguese and a Spanish version available. And it helps the product leaders to get going with their own version of it. So I always strongly encourage them, use it and then iterate on it, because I don't know about your company context. You know way better. So please adapt it, make it yours, customize it. And it can be a helpful tool for product managers as well. So if you're in a self-progression desert, and if your boss is not taking care of your personal development, you still could use the PM wheel as a self-assessment tool to see where you currently are and if there are any topics you would like to get better at or something like this. So that is a big part of what I do, is based on the product management wheel, so to say.
100% focus on coaching, right? Like self-coaching and how to coach others and communicate, like.
Yeah, because it's such a luxury to have a coach, right? We all know it's barely the case that you have a boss that is good in coaching you in your personal development topics. So having a coach from externally is even more of a luxury. And I'm pretty aware of that. So that's why I created some of the frameworks, or launched some of the frameworks that I'm having, so that it's easier for the people to assess themselves and to help them figure out what they want to learn next.
That is awesome. I think that's a great introduction to the first block that we have of assessing. So I will start with the questions directly from the public, and Mateo, feel free to take the next one. So one of the most upvoted questions is, which were the top 3 or more common errors or opportunities that you face in your experience through product coaching?
Now we cannot ask the person on a person level, on a company level. That would be my follow-up question. So when I have to reflect on what is the top 3 opportunities or challenges that coaches are having, then as said, so one is that nobody cares about their personal development, or they don't have the time to invest in their personal development. So that is one bucket for sure. And then another bucket is that the system around them, so the company or the product organization, it depends a bit on the size of the company, is working in different ways than the product organization. So that is a pretty common theme. So they're working in old fart ways, management 1.0, rather hierarchical, and the product organization, including developers and design, already try to work in a more empowered cross-functional setup. So that causes a lot of friction, I would say, these days. And then another challenge that a lot of coaches are having is being miles away from customers and users. So they really want to bridge the gap. They really want to talk to clients and customers more often, but just they struggle how to start that, how to kick that off, how to get that going in a lean way so that it's not a massive overhead. So I think these are some of the major topics in the coachings.
Nice. So of course, for depending on the environment, on the challenge, right? Skills may vary, like the skills that you put in practice may vary, right? As a product manager. So the question we have here is, which are the most important skills to develop when being a product manager on a startup, in the world of startups, in your point of view?
It really depends on if you're doing it the first time. So are you a first-time product manager? Then it's a totally different story. When you're a seasoned product manager, I think you need to adapt to the startup environment, right? So it's usually rather fast-paced. You usually have to have a bit more business focus. A lot of the times you're even responsible for profit and loss for your product. Sometimes you even have marketing folks in your team. So it's way more cross-functional than it is in some of the larger corporations. So that is something you need to cope with, right? More talent, it's a bit like working with diamonds that you took out of the earth kind of recently. So you need to do a bit more of this. Okay, let's see if this is something nice and shiny with most of the people. So you have to create a team. It's it's a pretty rough environment. So if you're a product manager in such a startup environment, try to not add too much to the noise that is already there. Try to be more of a calming force and more like bringing a bit more structure. Of course, not a structure overhead, not too much of a structure. Keep it lean still, but your focus should be more like, okay, we're living in a crazy startup world anyways. Maybe I can contribute to sort things out, to calm some of the chaos. So I think that is an important skill to have. Yeah, and then it's a bit of take it slow, step by step, because that's what you should focus on. So focus on getting money in first, as always, or maybe not money. If there's a lot of funding from startup VCs, then maybe money is not your first your first worry. But still, you need to find product market fit, and that is the number one thing you should be focusing on. And once you found that, things will get easier. Then you can refocus on, hey, how are we doing product in this company now that we're scaling? Maybe we should create some processes around some things at least, or use one tool and not 20 of them. So yeah, it's a bit of it. That's a lot of the work you do when you're in a startup. And if you're totally unexperienced product person, so first timer, yeah, then I would say read some of the basic books and see how fast you can come up. The Mind the Product blog, I think you mentioned it in the introduction and stuff like this. Join a community like this ProductTank Latin America, right? So the other people that know your struggles, or the Slack community out there, and just like really like ask like, hey, are there other product folks out there that are currently working in a startup? Let's form this little small learning buddies circle or something like this. I think this is really important.
Or we can send you a DM via LinkedIn. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that happens sometimes as well.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for that.
I think I have a question. There are two people asking something similar, so I think it's a great next step. But it's moving a bit away from the startup world, maybe more mature companies that are trying to or thinking about introducing the PM Wille. So the first one is how to reduce the friction when introducing it. And the second one, probably related, is how to execute it with the team with empathy.
Okay, how to execute it with the team with empathy. Oh, okay. You maybe need to remind me about the second part, Nacho.
No problem.
Okay, if you would like to start using the PM Wille, there varies by how you could do it. So as a leader, you could encourage your team to just use it on their own to see if it helps them first, while you are customizing it to your needs, right? That is an important step that we don't want to skip. But that could be something. So not make it a team assessment. Please never make it a team assessment. The PM Wille is there for self-assessment purposes or for a career conversation between you and the direct report. So the product manager and the product lead. Of course, it's nice if you go ask some other people for feedback. So you could take the PM Wille, go to your designers, go to your developers, ask them, hey, what do you think am I capable of? Where are my strong skills and weaker skills? So that is a nice thing, but it is not something that you should use as a company-wide product management assessment, right? It's not something I would recommend. And if you're framing it like this, then that reduces a lot of friction. So tell the people that it's not like assessing and comparing. It's more like helping you as a product manager to figure out where you could focus on if you think about and the next best learning opportunity, so to say. So that eases a lot of the friction. And then we haven't talked about the future self. So now I need to introduce the future self. Again, it's on my website. You'll find it there. The future self is once you did the assessment and you have one or two things where you think I would like to get better at, let's say prioritization or conducting user interviews, then you create such a future self. So you describe your current status and your future status. So how would I know that I have improved the skill, and how would others actually know that I have improved the skill? And then you create action items. So what does it take so that I actually improve the skill? If we talk about prioritization, it would be things like, okay, first of all, I want to write down my criteria for prioritization as I see them today. Then the next step might be think about, okay, is that the right way of prioritizing things? Learn more how other people are doing it. Then create my new way or my to-be way of prioritization, and then make sure that people understand how I'm doing prioritization. So that could be action items, things that you really could tick off a box. And I usually recommend my clients that they use the future self first and the PM wheel later, because every PM has this one thing they want to work on. So if you're a product leader, that would be something you could start with. So not with the assessment. That is something you could do later on. First of all, it's like, hey, what do you want to learn? And may I help you to, find a bit more of a structured approach to this learning thing.
Nice. So we have lots of questions here. We have this one from Erica that has 7 votes. It's really popular, and it's actually, I believe you already gave some sneak peek around or some quick advices around this in your past answer. But in terms of grow as a PM, right, from junior or semi-senior, let's say, to a senior PM, and then go through the leadership ladder, like product lead and product director or head of product and TVP, etc. So which will be your most valuable tip or advice there?
So I think the most valuable advice at first is you only can decide where you want to go in your given context, right? So if you're a junior PM in one company, you might already be a midterm PM in another company. Or if you called a senior PM or principal PM, you still would be a mid-level PM in another company. So first of all, you have to understand how your company is deciding all these things, and what are the rules that apply. And then the question always is focus more. So don't focus so much on leveling up on the title, focus more on what do I want to learn in the given context currently that might lead to the next promotion or something like this, right? So, for example, if user research or user-centric product management is something you're not yet good at, and your current company is maybe not putting a lot of emphasis to it, but you consider leaving the company in the next 2 years, then you might want to dedicate some of your time already to this topic, because you know that it is a massive topic in other companies that are work in this product-led sense, so to say. So I would always say, like, never pick something to learn just because of it gets you from a junior PM to a PM in your current context. If it's not interesting to you, so if it's interesting to you, always go learn it. Totally perfectly fine. And if you think it will, in the long term, help your career, then always do it as well. Just don't do the leveling up in your current context. I think this is one thing. And then the other major tip is you don't always have to go down the leadership path, so to say. So you can, if you love people and if you love dealing with your colleagues, and if you really have a lot of empathy and stuff like this, and if you want to invest a bit of time and learn coaching practice and all these kind of things, and how to hire and fire people, which is the hard part of the tough part of the job, then you should for sure do it. So if you like people, consider doing that. If it's not for you, I would strongly encourage you to really look for an individual contributor career path. So companies that do have seasoned, VP products or super senior product folks around that focus then more on onboarding or creating the company culture or nurturing a community of practice within the company. So these companies exist, and if you're not so into product leadership, that could be a path for you.
Cool, great advice.
Oh, Nacho, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Always happen. So I think we're already talking about the improving side of the conversation. I think it's a good moment to move to the next block. And I actually have, going back to the startup questions, there are two questions that are pretty much the same. So for a startup that is starting to grow the product practice, starting with 1 or 2 product managers, what are the next steps required, or what are the most common issues they may fall into?
Yeah, again, not talk. So the most dangerous things to startups is if they don't find product market fit. So if you create a product which nobody actually wants to buy, or maybe people want to use it but are not willing to pay the amount of money that it would need to be a sustainable solution, right? So that's the number one risk in a startup. There is other risks, like you could still totally screw it up because of internal reasons or stuff like this. But talking about the product, so this should be your number one concern. And I always like to use the 4 big risks of software development Marty Kagan is usually talking about. So really always make sure that you think about, okay, is the solution that we're having in mind deliver value to somebody? Is it usable by these people? So do they understand it without me in the room or without a massive manual? Is it something that we can build with the team that we're currently having? That is a really dangerous thing in startups as well, because most of the times you only have like 2 to 5 developers and you have massive ideas, ambitions, and visions. But the question is, can you make them come true with the team you're currently having and the skills that they're having? And last but not least, Nacho, go for it. Okay, I just want to add the last 2. So viability, does it make economical sense for the company to do it? And is it legally okay to do it? Because you can create something that ticks all the other boxes, but it's just like illegal. And then recently, the product community talks a lot about, is it morally and ethically okay to do so, right? Mm-hmm. So that is another check that I would always encourage startups to check. Does it contribute to the greater good of the planet or human mankind or whatever? But mainly you should focus on finding this balance, this product that's striking the balance between valuable, feasible, viable, and usable.
Building on top of that, I think that the question that I'm putting my shoes of the founder or someone in charge of building this product capability. So what will be the key elements they should consider, or the key issue they should avoid when starting this, or hiring their first product manager, or building the product capability, maybe moving someone to a product manager role?
What's the question? I didn't get the question part in that. So is it a question about...
So what would be the problem they should be aware of, or what would be the recommendation when they are creating the first product management position?
Yeah, so the thing they should focus, the founders should focus on, is directional clarity. That is the most important thing. So is it clear where all of this should be heading? And is it clear to an extent that I, as a founder, have not to be in the office on the lap of the product manager each and every minute, right? So that is the question, because that's what a lot of founders do. They have been more or less product manager number 1 for their startup, but now they're bringing in more product people, and usually they drive them nuts with micromanagement. So the question is, how can they create a framework that helps to give a lot of this directional clarity? And what we're usually talking about is giving a lot of product direction here. Somebody wrote a book about product direction. I think it was Nacho. So it's a good one. You may want to read this if you're a product founder. And it's really about strategy, vision, and all these things, even if it sounds massively boring, but that's exactly the leadership things or mechanics that you want to use in such a situation, I would say. Nacho, maybe you can add something to that one.
That's great.
Nice. So I believe this one may be related with what Nacho just asked, but in terms of, I personally believe that regarding improving your skills depends on the, well, something that you mentioned before, Petra, depends on the situation you are in your company, like the organizational culture, right, and all that. So if the organizational culture is like really product oriented and have product practices and everything, it's like you will be much how do I say it, like in a better environment to expand your skills, right?
Yeah.
So that is, but which so any tip that you may share, that you can share with us to actually to help your company to be a little more product oriented, if it's of course a traditional type of company, right? Like to be more like product focus, and that ultimately will help you to improve, right, or to expand your product skills.
Yeah. So two things. First of all, this whole transition usually takes ages. So it takes way longer than you would expect, right? So take it easy. Baby steps, as Vero would say. Hello, Vero. It's really baby steps that you need to take. And I think so there's some points where you could start. One point that usually helps everybody is if the company as a group of people realizes that most of the things that they currently do are based on assumptions, right? So because the founder of a company says like, I think we should build this, that's an assumption. Or sales said, the people will love this feature, an assumption. So that is an important realization. And whatever you could do to make this something that the people realize, I think that is a massive achievement. And how are you doing it? So you could actually go co-create a solution or a feature with your sales department, then you build it, and then you really measure the impact it had and if people really liked it. And then you tell them the unpleasant truth of they didn't. Because that is what happens in most of the cases, right? So you help them see the world as it is. You do it in a polite way. And as I was saying, you invite them to co-create with you. So it's not that they just tell you what to do. You really say like, hey, okay, come, then let's think about a perfect feature or a perfect solution. Even if you know it's a bit of a waste of time because people might not love it, it still has this potential that there will be this moment in the sales team so that they say like, okay, but now Petra, how would you approach this? And then I would tell them, maybe we could think about a small experiment that we could run. Maybe we put it on a Google AdWord and just like throw $100 at the Google Ads machine to see if people click at it and are interested of this feature. So help them learn that most of the things that you're currently operating with are assumptions, and next step would help them to understand how you could experiment so that it's cheaper to figure out what the people actually need. So that, for example, could be a major step and a good first step, and then take it easy. It will take time.
Yeah, it's a great advice. Something really, really similar happened to me like 1 year ago. And I was co-creating with someone from sales department, right? And was like exactly because they in some way they drive its efforts, right? And then they have a lot of power there. If they see that there is some potential that they are not exploding, not focusing, that will happen quickly. So great advice. Great advice.
Thank you.
I think that probably switching gears a bit, but focusing more on this improving side. One of the questions related to which are the most relevant skills. So I'm a new PM. I have a world of opportunities for improvement. So which are the most relevant, or how do I prioritize which skills should I incorporate first?
If possible, go have a conversation with your people lead about what could be a good next bigger challenge for you, because I think most of us are learning best on the job. So this theoretical learning about reading books and then not having the chance to apply, that is not so motivating, right? So focus on the things that you could read something on, watch talks, listen to podcasts, but then go apply what you have learned in your given situation. And it really helps to have this framing of next bigger challenge. So what could be my next bigger challenge? And that is more like a generic general advice, right? If I would need to pick some of the things that I think are great starting points to learn something, then it's really like conducting user research and how to structure all the learnings. So that is, for example, something that always helps. So being good at user interviews, learning about human biases and why you cannot ask people if they like the feature or not, because that's a no-go. I think this is a time well spent if you pick up this art of product research. And then another great thing to do is your storytelling capabilities. So are you in the position that you could rally your team behind a shared goal? So that, for example, what stories do you need to tell to really have them to have this notion of, yes, it's worth it, and we really want to tackle this and we want to get this out of the door. So it's a bit about how to motivate a team and all these kind of things. And then it's the basics of how to organize the execution part of the job, right? Then we're talking about creating backlog items and how to maintain the backlog and all these kind of things and how to do a bit of the planning. So it's really hard to pick because it's a super challenging job and profession to have. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think that's a good transition to the next topic that we are on time to switch. And I will ask, adding to that question, what to do if your boss is either not a skilled product manager or not that responsive when you ask that type of question?
That is a perfect question. Thanks for asking. So what you need to do then is you need to create your A team. So you need to find 3 people, maybe even outside of the company. So one person should really have a vision for you. So they have worked with you or they know you from other contexts and they have this idea of what you're good at. And this is your go-to person if you need a bit of self-reassurance and somebody who actually says like, yeah, but you're good at that. So then you're good at that. So maybe we should use more of that skill or something like this. So that's a rather positive setup. So that's the person that has a vision for you. Then you need somebody who can give you feedback on a day-to-day basis. So not really day-to-day, but somebody who's around while you're doing your work. So they see you have meetings sometimes and they may be even on the team with you. So it could be an agile coach or it could be one of your developers that is rather senior or something like this. But it has to be someone who sees you doing the work, and it needs to be someone who is willing to give honest and radical candid feedback, and positive and negative feedback. So right, if you wrote a great status report, then they should say like, hey, awesome status report. But if you held a horrible meeting and you came totally unprepared, then they should point that out as well, right? So find a person who has a vision for you and can give you some feedback. And last but not least, I think it's key to have somebody around who knows how a good product manager looks like. And that can be an external coach, but there can be somebody else from the community. So maybe there's somebody in a company close by, the office down the road, sharing some of the same struggles, but is 2 years ahead of your current progression. Then that's maybe somebody you want to work with. It's a bit about finding a mentor, and finding somebody who could curate a bit of your learning experience, so point you in the right directions, help you with some of the books and all these kind of things. Yeah.
ProductTank is a great place to find those mentors.
Yeah, it's true. It really is. That's the case. Yeah.
Nice. Actually, I had one that I really relates more with the improvement, but I was thinking on, well, improvement as we discussed, is about or limits can or may limit to may limit your expansion if you are in a challenge environment, right? So my question would be, of course, you need to in this kind of challenging environments, you need to be really aware on what is going on, right? Who to talk with, depending on, I don't know, different things that you may improve, or you may try. I don't know, if you want to experiment, or as you mentioned, you want to how I say, like, create assumptions and try to like experimentation culture, right? So who should or how to generate buy-in, right, from leadership or from your boss or from, so I believe that all that is really important, right, to understand who to talk with, right? So any tips on that, like, based on your experience, right?
Yeah, so I think an important thing is, if there is all talk and no action, then it's super hard to convince people that your way of working is better than their way of working, right? So I think it's really about proving, or at least showing, that some of the things you have in mind are nicer than the stuff the company so far invested on, or something like this. And it can be, sometimes it's really simple things. So if you think the team totally lost track of the moving parts of their current release or something like this, then maybe a task board and a bit of a standard gives it the necessary framing, so to say, right? So what I always advise people is to use the super common ways of working that most of the people are using, and think about, could they be helpful in your situation? Sometimes they're not. A lot of the times they are. And then it is important to talk about the achievements. So if that helped people to get more oversight and to have more overview over the moving parts, so to say, then make sure that you tell the story, and you don't need to do a big campaign around it. I was the one who invented Taskboard. So that's not what I'm talking about. It's more, mention it. At least make sure that your boss, for example, knows to say, like, hey, have you heard that the Taskboard that we introduced the other day really helped us to have more transparency? So create small moments of success. Make sure you talk about these small moments of success. And as you were saying, Matteo, you really need to, sometimes I recommend like a stakeholder map. So you have your personas about, that's our customers that we want to cater. Then you have your stakeholder map that tells about, okay, what are the people I need to talk to when coming up with a product? But you could do something similar for your career. So who are the people in the company that need to hear about your latest successes, so that by any given point in time, they will say, like, yeah, Matteo or Nacho, these are the folks we should talk to if we want to improve that or this or whatever, right? Yeah, so create a bit of a map and think about who needs to hear about your successes.
Totally nice.
Well, I think there is a challenging environment I haven't considered. It's very much about it. So it's interesting. How can you develop your product management skills when you are part of a consultancy, so working as a vendor?
Yeah, that is super hard.
Challenging environment.
There is a frank answer to that. So even I've really created some products in my career. Sometimes I accept customer projects that are really forcing me to do some product work again. Sometimes it's about really helping them to get the strategy sorted or something like this, just to get me back in this groove of, okay, it's way more complicated than I always think. And it so quickly happens then when I'm not working as a product manager for at least, I would say, 1.5 years, then it all seems to be, it's just advice. It's super easy. Why are they not doing what I actually tell them to do? So I always have to reinforce myself to go more down in, where actually the dirty work happens, to recalibrate myself. It's actually all these details. If should it be a checkbox or a radio button? So many decisions a product manager has to make sure. So it's really about creating these moments of learning. That sometimes can happen if you are allowed to pick the clients you assign to, then pick wise and pick the ones where it maybe is a bit more stressful because they are more involved and you have to do some of the decisions as well. So it's not that laid back, but do it, you will learn a ton. And then pet projects. So you still could help the world become a better place with, I don't know, programming a COVID app or whatever, right? So pet projects are a good thing to learn as well.
Nice.
So many good questions. Thanks everybody for asking.
Super engaged.
Totally. I have one but I believe, I may relate with this like challenging environments, but I believe it's more like aspirational from the times that are coming, let's say for next years. But I don't want to go to, how I say, like turn from the topic that we are now, but I'm extremely curious about your point of view.
Go for it.
So I just read a phrase of Steve Blank. For the ones that don't know, Steve Blank, one of the creators of the customer development, right, and one of the starters or creators of the lean startup movement and Greece and all that. So the phrase was, project work pays your salary, but innovation pays your retirement. Right? I really love that phrase, and actually something that we learned today was that there is no like one skill in general that we can talk about, because that depends on the environment, on lots of stuff, right? But so how do you see product management regarding skills, right? And which are your, I don't know, top 2 or 3 skills that you believe will be key in next 2 or 3 years? I believe it's a tricky question, but your point of view regarding your experience, and how do you see product management world today?
That is a big question. So first of all, I think we might see different personality traits in product people that we have seen in the past. So I think curiosity and being open to change and being really adaptable, intellectual horsepower, so the willingness to compile a lot of information, all these things will become more important in the world in general, and even more so for product folks, right? Because information reprocessing will grow, not shrink. And there will be harder problems to tackle, because currently most of us are still tackling like how we're selling more stuff on the internet. But I think that will change, and I hope that will change, that we're focusing more on the really important questions out there. And even if it's just like small ecological things we're doing and we could improve, and that's the innovative part. So then that is super powerful. So that is personality traits wise, and I know you cannot change your personality immediately, but surround yourself with people that have a lot of curiosity and that are adaptive and that are smart. So it's not necessarily intellectually smart. It's perfectly fine if they like smart and can make the world around in this world. So that's perfectly fine. But surround yourself with these type of people, right? And then skill-wise, what I was already mentioning, right? It's really like talking to people, talking to users, figure out what they really want and not just what they say that they want, and doing this in the cheapest way possible. I think this is a key thing. And then working well with the team, because the team thing will even grow stronger as well. All work is teamwork in the future, hopefully. So that is something that we will see even more, I would say.
Nice, love it because all it's really resonates a lot in me what you are mentioning around communication, co-creation, teamwork, and from a like coach mindset, right? Like it's not like I will tell you what to do, but I will support you so we can leverage, let's say, our best skills, our best every experience, to be diverse and all that.
And that is an important framing. Usually I always tell product people that think they are here for making every decision. I always tell them, no, that's not the job. Your job is to make sure that the decision gets made, but it's not your job to make all of the decisions, right? And so it's really leverage the power of a team and understand how to do so. And I think that is an important skill.
Really nice.
Yeah, that was a great closing questions and comments. That was perfect
Indeed.
timing we had. But Petra, I don't know if you want to share any other, either an answer to a question we didn't ask or any other final tip or word you want to share with us.
I think we really touched upon all of the topics that we're usually touching upon in such sessions. So that was perfect. No, thank you. I really hope that it helped some of the people to get unstuck in their career or in their self-progression, and it helps them to understand, okay, what are good topics to learn? And really, if it's one thing, then go reach out, be part of a community, talk to people outside of your company. That's always a win. It's such a friendly and helpful and supportive community, and so diverse. So reach out. Product communities here.
Okay, so thank you so much for the time. Thanks everyone who has been watching. A super engaged community today, and we are super thankful for that.
Everyone.
Totally.
But yeah, thank you for helping us grow the Product Latam community. And one final tip I will share is that for sure, go read this book. It's super useful for.
And that's another one that is really nice.
Nice.
Yes. Thank you so much, Petra. Super useful for everyone, and thank you everyone who has been supporting this. I already mentioned all the organizers from the Latin communities, and also Diego and Vero who are behind the scenes. So thank you so much to everyone.
Totally, and we can say now that we are better product managers right now.
Exactly.
Hopefully stronger.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.